My name is Ranesh Kanaganayagam. I am on the product marketing team here at Affinity. As many of you know, we've talked about it a ton throughout the day, and we've talked about it at previous campfires and throughout the history of Affinity. Automation is massive here, and I think the impulse that goes into that is we want to minimize the amount of manual data entry that goes into all of the different workflows that are involved in deal making. And so one of the reasons why I'm super excited about this session is when Sergio and I started to talk about what this session could be about today, we discussed how there, in the spirit of Roble Ventures, there is a ton of minimization of that manual data entry. Not all of it is automation, but there's this interconnected machine that goes into their deal making at Roble Ventures. So from here on out, as we kind of talked about at the beginning of the session, we're going to hand the reins to the customer. So Sergio, so excited to have you here representing Roble Ventures. And with that, take it away.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I was very excited to be able to speak. I'm a founding partner of Roble Ventures. I'm not in the operations side of the firm. I know a lot of you guys are. And it is very much an emerging manager that I started this fund 2 years ago. So when we say helps us diligence 1,000 deals, I was thinking about some of the firms that are here. It's not very impressive until you sort of notice that it was one person up to 6 months ago, and now we have three people on our team, but two on the deal side. So it's in the context of an emerging manager that I'll talk to you about, and how we could get up and running with Affinity and all the systems that we have, with very much a sort of a very brand aware approach that I'll talk to you about. So that'll be the context, more as an emerging manager of this of Affinity, as an Affinity client. So with that, let me give you a few things. I was just going to speak about just a personal introduction for context. Since, I've been in venture for a long time, but I wanted to kind of give you the context of how this came about, and not only the firm, but what we call the venture OS of the future, which we're just in the beginnings of building. Then would tell you a little bit about the fund, and then just talk about the overview of how we build the platform and where we want to take it. That's more important because we're, like I said, 2 years into this, and we have a lot way to go. So with that, first and foremost, the most important thing about our firm is that I wanted to build this firm for many, many years, having been in venture for 16, 17 years. I wanted to build a firm that was very customer-centric and used both humans for what humans do well, and systems for what systems do well. And with the sort of the great invention of Gen AI, I think we're just scratching the surface on that. But the way I think about it is, how can we use the two to collaborate in not only we call it human enablement technologies is where we invest.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's not just about where we invest, that we enable humans, is how we do work, so that we could actually be very customer-centric, very employee-centric.
Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that. We do bet on what we consider to be uncommon founders. So you can't just really look at a LinkedIn resume and sort of and look at where they went to school and things like that. We really do focus on sort of what we consider to be the new face of venture. Over 60% of our CEOs are women, for example. A lot of them come from different countries. There's a certain definition that we have about uncommon founders, which makes them very difficult to find if you're just not looking at these sort of flashy brands on your resume. So that's sort of the context of it, on who we are as a firm. And talking about shiny brands, I do have those, but poor segue. I do have some shiny brands myself, and that's how I broke into venture, I guess. But the important points here is that as me as a background, I always think of venture as I started my studies as an engineer, and I always think of bottleneck reduction and optimization as kind of like the key to every system that you build. And that's how I wanted to start Roble, as a system, not as a linear sort of human process only. And as I moved on to my career, became an entrepreneur, I started my own firm. the other type of firm, the startup type firm, and got venture funding, and I ran sales for that. So to me, the combination of what you'll see here is a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, the way I wanted to build a firm is the combination of sales, customer support, almost enterprise ready. Think of enterprise sales, your best companies, how do they run their operations as a startup? If you're selling into enterprises, long sales cycles, sometimes they're short, sometimes they're long for us because they're seed. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they're very they need to be tracked and thought through, and so obviously you have to think about the customer success part of it, right? So as I did my startup, then I later went to a firm called Northwest, which is a very established firm, 60 years in business, and I got to really be thematic about, eventually become very thematically focused. So combine the sales, engineering, sort of this bottleneck reduction sort of approach, systems thinking approach with the thematic is how we kind of put it all together. Yep. And I do teach that sort of portion of a class at Stanford. I've been lucky enough to teach it at 6-7 years. So the three things that kind of combine is exactly that, and so that's what I was going to talk to you a little bit about. But there is a method to the madness and a historic thing why it's come full circle.
Yeah, right? Totally.
So let me spend some time on this a little bit. Is the way we think about it. So back to the sales funnel approach. Nothing earth shattering for you guys. Like I said, it's very much a standard funnel that we think about. How can we actually use people in the right context and the systems in the right context along all the, in this case, 5 parts of the funnel? Think about this, because we only have, we're only our first fund. We don't have the sophistication in the bottom part of the funnel yet, because we focused on the top. Yeah, because when we have 18 companies in the portfolio, there's not as much necessity to track all these different things that we are getting to. Yep. But think of us as much more nascent in the kind of a little bit more the bottom side, the value add. We've been sort of trying to do that more and more. But as the team has come on board, I think we've done that. So the majority of the stuff that we've done is around brand, sourcing, diligence, winning the deal. That's super important, and that's through the thematic approach that we have, and then the value add. So that's kind of the context. For that, on the left-hand side, we have 3 people, and soon we'll have more. But reality is that we have a platform person, 2 deal folks, myself and our principal. And then on the system side, the reason I think this is not incredibly sophisticated, but it is, the most important thing here is that we have 16 or 17 systems that we use to stitch together and to try to kind of automate as much as possible through the talking of the systems, including Affinity. Yep. Each of these systems kind of plays its own role in each of the parts of the funnel, and it reinforces the ability for us to win and to kind of get to add value to our companies and eventually exit in a successful way. So I'll talk to you about how that pairs together a little bit, and then we can kind of move through that funnel. So think of that as the kind of the framework that I'll use. Ultimately, though, in each of these parts, what I wanted to think about as I was building Roble is how can we actually maximize customer centricity and think of our entrepreneurs as the center of our world, right? And so when we talk to our startups about being customer centric, how can we not be? How can we be the same, right? So, for example, one thing that we do is we survey every single one of the meetings that we have out of the thousands that are mentioned in the title. Is we email them automatically with a survey and try to track the NPS, how they felt about the meeting, even though 99.9% of them don't turn into opportunities, and that has turned out to be a really good positive thing for us. There's other things that we do in an automated way, but there's no way that we could email manually everybody, right? So, and that goes through the systems. It's either MailChimp to Affinity to other systems, but I'll talk to you about that as well. The thing that I wanted to make sure is that when we use Affinity, we sort of have a very much accountability and owners. There's a sort of oftentimes there's an owner, which is either myself or a principal, and then there's a supporter, depending on whether there's a portfolio support effort to be done there. The pipeline management is key. It's we have a lot of deals to go through, and it has to be super automated. Portfolio value add tracking is something we're working on right now. We sort of have a set of things that we insource and a set of things that we use Affinity for outsource. Yep. And we'll talk more about that. We, as a firm, I always wanted to make sure that we don't overpromise and underdeliver. It's actually hopefully the opposite. Yep. And so in value-added services are oftentimes a big time sink for a firm that's so small. So we wanted to kind of be authentic to what we offer and then be able to have a network that we track very, very religiously so that we could actually put the right person to the right, make the right introduction, right? We don't yet have who's introducing whom. I think I love that feature that people have. And as we get a bigger team, we'll be able to track that gamification of sort of introductions that people make. And not only that, but the quality of introductions is key. So for now, we're doing that a little bit more manually. The advisor network that we have is key to us. And so that's another thing we track in Affinity. And obviously the LP tracking as we head into Fund 2, I think that's a key feature that I think Capor, for example, is doing a great job. It sounds like I'm going to copy a lot of the things you're doing. It's great. But we'll use Affinity for all of that. So let's get into the nitty gritty. I think when I think about the fund that we're building, I think the number one key thing is we've realized that because of the years of investing that we have and sort of the way we operate is that thematic research and content marketing are a big part of us. Yep. And so how can we always think about how can we use those levers in social media? For example, we have 30,000 followers now in our social media channels, my newsletters, and that's been built over the last year and a half. And so with that really allows us not to necessarily get directly to a founder, but to get to the referral sources, because 88% of our deals get either tipped off by our network or referred to us by our network. Either directly say you should talk to that company or that founder. Most of the time it's not even a company yet. Or they say, hey, did you talk to so-and-so, right? And so we have to be top of mind with our framework, with our thematic research. So I'll talk to you about that. Second step is the targeted outbound and inbound also through Typeform. And so there's two ways to get those deals in. The pitch form, which a lot of you guys have through Typeform, is so critical, but the way we've integrated it through Zapier and through Affinity makes it a lot more scalable for us. Obviously, the personalized emails then make sense to say, hey, confirming. Then going into the CRM record, the Affinity record, it's critical how we do it. We try to manage our Monday meetings in such a way that where everybody kind of knows what's going on. But I'll show you some screenshots there. As we have the team discussion, it's either because we have the thematic roadmaps at the top. The thematic roadmaps allow us to sort of have honed in on sort of what we're looking for. What neighborhood are we hunting in, so to speak, and then what would it look like for that? So a good example of that is a company I invested in a while back. That's probably a good full cycle example is Udemy. I invested in it 2013 or 14 when we sort of came up with the thematic roadmap saying, hey, shouldn't there be something that exists that teaches not just, we get teachers or we get schools that teach from 5 years old to 21 years old, but why don't we have anybody teaching from 21 to 100 in a scalable way? And so we came up with this whole lifelong learning necessity. And so that's what led us to look at all the players that eventually became bigger players like Coursera, Udemy, and all that. And so that we use the same playbook to say, okay, what should exist in 5 years, in 10 years? With that gives us a sort of a framework, and and then with that, then we at least are more prepared to turn the deal down quickly. Obviously, it's a lot about the team too. So we're looking for these uncommon founders.
Yeah.
Be prepared for that, and we're looking for the theme. So that, I think that's part of the reason that we get back to the founders in less than 2-3 days. Obviously, and get back to them with no very quickly. But if it's a yes, obviously we have to do very thorough but very swift diligence through all the tools that we have. From that, we have a first meeting, and then we go through the diligence process. We're trying to automate the diligence process a lot more. It'd be great to have more integration. I mean, we just got the Affinity note taker. We've been using Firefly. And I think that the ability to kind of create a really solid deal memo and then use that as a reference point, a living document for future references, including postmortems on what happened, positive or negative. That's super important. We're gonna get there, and there could be a lot automated there, right? Then the portfolio onboarding, we do have some services and some technology that's helped us a lot, sort of offer certain things like discounts and advisor networks that are pre-vetted advisor networks for our entrepreneurs. We don't do those in-house, obviously, because that's a big lift. What I can do is just walk you through the kind of the process and then take any questions. So I was going to go through each of the boxes and just show you some of how those technologies interact with the few humans in our firm. So first, and I think this is kind of the crown jewel of what we do, is because we're very thematic and future work focused, which includes nowadays, for example, today we just published one of these roadmaps where we're seeing based on all the meetings and all the Affinity records, we're now noticing a pattern where, for example, I don't know what we call this snazzy line, but it was like you come for the training or you come for the coach and you stay for the workflow, right? So when we're seeing AI happen in a couple of our companies, our AI companies are coming and training new employees in a certain way, like sales folks with simulations. But now the salespeople are saying, can I bring my co-pilot with me? And that creates a new workflow. So almost like reinventing the process of sales by actually coming in from a training perspective and then just from a buddy perspective, right? So that entry point has become interesting for a few of our companies. So we're publishing something around that to say, hey, this is something that is a pattern that we like to see, because that's the way to kind of ICP directly, get an ICP quickly, and your go-to-market cost goes down.
And just before you continue to the next one, not to interject too much there, is how does that piece of content come to be?
Yeah. Well, right now, I mean, I have a pitch book in there. I think the reality is Affinity is great in. So let's say that we meet a company, because we're thematic. Let's say that we met 30 companies in this specific sort of space, right? With PitchBook, you actually can create a market map. A market map to us is just a snapshot of what's going on today.
Yeah.
The way to turn it into a market roadmap is where's it going to be 5 years, 10 years from now. So you could always punch in the companies that we meet through Affinity, put them into PitchBook, and they create a map for you, right? Or we could, obviously we could adjust it. But the more important type of work is okay, let's extrapolate. What does that really look like for the future? Yeah. That we haven't been able to automate, frankly.
Yeah,
it's the writing we could automate.
Yeah.
The sort of distilling of the essence we could automate, but all these three themes that we describe here, for example, the AI startups in the enterprise, it's all about data, AI co-pilots framework. We're kind of taking it a V2 as of today. We just took another step at it. Or sort of the necessity for lifelong learning as a mandate in the future by companies, like it's the table stakes, right?
Yeah.
That came out of sort of more research, obviously, around some of the things that we've invested in.
That's great.
So I think there's more automation that can be done, but if you can imagine Gen AI with the Affinity records, with some of the Firefly, note taker, and with some of the type form stuff that we get, if you're able to kind of put all that together, there's going to be some amazing summaries that could then the human could, the investor can use to then elevate the thinking, right?
Yeah.
To us, that's the most exciting part.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of data that needs to get crunched to develop these roadmaps. So in the content marketing, the other thing is the signals that we can get from our own webinars and in our newsletter. We understand who's opening what article in our newsletter, and so that we know that what advisor or what an angel or what potential entrepreneur is interested in.
Yeah.
What piece of content. Obviously, we have webinars where they join and we understand sort of exactly who's interested in that topic. And so we start segmenting that in our databases at Affinity. But it allows us to at least understand the signals so that we know where we can get referrals for deals and things like that. And for that, we use MailChimp, Zoom, Affinity, tied together. MailChimp, obviously, if we use Zapier and MailChimp, we are able to kind of trigger an email as well. So that works well. In targeted outbound, we've been toying around with these three systems. Well, obviously Affinity we already have, but Gravity is another one where we can actually find some movement among people in our databases that are more stealth mode. And then Meet Alfred is another one that allows us to sort of automate an outbound campaign in a very scalable way. So we're trying to use those two systems with Affinity to try to tie them together. And this is, again, when it's targeted outbound, it's all about sourcing, right? It's sourcing new opportunities. That's where most of our work has been going, at least for now. In terms of our inbound website, there is we've spent a lot of time on our branding because we do want to attract the right type of founder. And so we just redid our branding. And one of the things that we like is that our type form is very obviously you have to be within the theme to fill it out, but once it gets filled out, ideally it then goes right into it does go into the Affinity, and then we do all that. It's not rocket science. What we do with it, though, then how you communicate also is fed through all the other stuff that we do to see if the record has any kind of specific interest or additional information. The other thing, I think that these are like minor little tips, but one call to action always when somebody fills out the type form, we call to action, hey, sign up for our newsletter to keep track of us. Like it's just a simple, and that's how we kind of get more signups, or follow us on LinkedIn. So that whole 360 ability not to lose track of this founder, because most likely this founder will not be part of our portfolio based on just pure numbers, but we don't want to lose them. So there's some things that we can tie together with our other sort of constant communication pieces. This is kind of just an example of making sure that we continuously communicate with them as they submit their pitch. Obviously, this is just a trigger email, not a big deal. But what it does do, the automated emails to us are important because they kind of they come from us, right? But it's automated through Zapier, Typeform, and Affinity, so that we could actually, in MailChimp, so that we could actually sort of send them the thank you emails, hey, what did you think of the meeting emails? Like, hey, here's the next step. We're going to get back to you within 5 days. Yeah. And so to us, the systems here are not just about they're not just about thoroughness and making sure we don't fumble, or that's our every time that we think of a process, we always ask ourselves, how can we systematize the process so that we avoid fumbles, right? Yeah. And so it's not just about the fumbles, it's about also the speed. Because I think in seed stage, especially, speed is the number one thing people are actually, they told us in our branding exercise, that's the thing that they care about probably more than anything else. So when we fill out the record, I think for us, the record has not only the pitch, it has how much they're raising, all of that, which is kind of standard stuff, but it gets automatically filled out through the type form. we would love to, in the next iteration, fill in with other things that have happened with that specific founder or advisor, which is all through our content marketing and everything else. We haven't been able to tie that together yet. Cut. If you guys have a V2 on that, would be great.
Yeah, I'll definitely give you a call.
And then the way we manage our Monday meetings, I think we've toyed around with a lot of different ways. I think the list concept is cool, but not for our Monday meetings. I think the box concept is so visual, and we only have one thing in there: is who's the owner, right? And right now we're two people that could be the owners, potentially three, because our platform folks, a person is also doing a lot on the content marketing side, but in our funnel, this is exactly our funnel, right? We have inbound, outbound, first meeting, diligence, tracking with the trigger. The tracking has to have a trigger because it cannot live in tracking forever. The tracking is almost like no man's land. It's you're tracking it for a reason. Otherwise, if you don't have a reason, then you have to pass, right? In tracking, we tell the founder, hey, we're missing this information. It's a little too early because of this specific thing. So we want to be very specific. Once you reach that milestone, please, when do you think you will reach it? And then we put a trigger that says, hey, this founder thinks that they can reach it in 5 months, 3 months, 2 months. So let's put a trigger to talk to them about it and say they stay in tracking. If they didn't meet that milestone, then we decide to put it in pass, or if they did meet it, obviously we put it back as a diligence item, right? So we move these boxes as needed, and then obviously on the right we still have our other buckets like need to pass, and portfolio. Yeah. This is obviously we're gonna see Affinity Note Taker here, but to us, the more interesting opportunity is once we have a first meeting, we start populating the record with fireflies, and with potentially with other notes, and we haven't found an easy way, but I've already gotten some great ideas on how to do it, where we could actually create a very standardized deal memo that we could use as the living document that goes right back into Affinity, but then we have a record of what the risk factors are, what the mitigants are, and just really understand whether that company's tracking or not over time. So to us, this is kind of still TBD progress. All the components are there. It's just that we haven't stitched it together yet. Which is what I'm describing here. Is the deal memo to us is critical because we do what we do as a process is, as a company sort of has an event, either an exit or acqui-hire or sale or an IPO, whatever it is, we want to go back to the deal memo and say, okay, what was true, what worked out, what didn't work out. We could do this for companies that are in our portfolio, and we could also do that as what I call the anti-portfolio, companies that we missed that we missed for, or we passed on for whatever reason. So I think that those are also very good learnings, right? So I'll just say a few other items here, and if you guys have any questions, moving more towards the LP side, we use Adoro. I think Adoro has a really good. I'm a big fan of theirs. They have their own technology called Fund Panel. And so we haven't been able to stitch together that, and we haven't found enough of a use case to stitch it back together to our systems. So it's almost like two separate systems. But I could see a world where the LP reporting gets tied back to Affinity, especially as we move on to Fund 2, Fund 3. That'll be critical. A little bit like how it was described in the last panel. We would love to kind of do that. This to us is super interesting. The post-investment services, we found that we could do very little and very automated to just, to get people up and running. We do have an onboarding call for every company that we meet with. And one of the things that we talk about is our core services are things that we're uniquely positioned to deliver ourselves, because we're good. And those are two things. One is preparation for a board. We think that a board governance and preparing for a board in your Series A, super important. For example, people don't fill out their independent right away because they don't think it's important. It's very important. They also get too many of the same type of folks in their board that are all VCs. They all look the same, act the same, and group think the same.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of sort of the founders sometimes confuse their shareholder rights with the board rights. So there's a lot of things that we kind of do as sort of playbooks so that we can kind of say, hey guys, you don't have a board yet, which is great, but as you think about it, start preparing with these things in your Series A. We also give them like KPIs from our deal memo on, hey, these are the things that we're seeing in the market that you need to have to be able to reach that Series A as KPIs. So we shared with them a version of the deal memo. It'd be nice to kind of have that as a living document.
Yeah.
A sanitized version of the deal memo, right?
Yeah.
And then those are in terms of the things that we do as core to us. The things that we decided not to do ourselves because it would just drown us is things that bigger firms do, like recruiting and go-to-market and consulting around product market fit. We're just not equipped to do that right now. So what we did is created a Notion with all of our vetted advisors and service providers. And so that Notion gets transferred over to them, and they get to kind of use it as a way to sort of shortcut the process, and they don't have to reference check that specific vendor or consultant because we've had some good experiences with them. Also, Build First is a great marketplace for any kind of early stage startup discount. We found that our founders do use it. Discounts like AWS credits and in other kind of software or any other kind of thing that they may need. And then obviously we have our triggers with Affinity to do monthly check-ins with our companies, right? This is where we would love to do more, which is I think the learnings from the last talk is we would love to kind of have the same sort of funnel mentality for our LP funnel. Right now we have 600 or so sort of previous relationship LPs that we need to kind of push through the funnel.
Yeah.
But that hasn't been as automated as we'd like to, because all of those require really heavy sort of personal touch, right? And that in our ideal world, by the way, I'm sure this became clear in our ideal world is our VCOS. We wake up in the morning with very limited number of people, and we wake up and the computer tells us where to go, what to do, what to say, and we just charm. Use our charm and our human stuff, whatever it is. Negotiations, empathy, whatever is human, depending on what version of ChatGPT we have, we do, and then they do the rest. So that's kind of where we're gonna head. I think this is we covered this. The advisor network is also very important to us, and so we're trying to use Affinity to really cut the data in such a way that is very granular. For example, one of our companies was really thankful to us that we knew an advisor that was front of funnel, SMB, enterprise software for application layer, financial software. So like to be that granular, you need to have a big network. And because we're thematic, hopefully we're starting to build more of the same. And my prior firm, I had to we had 26 partners or 27 partners. So we all had a support our lead partner and they needed to support us if we're the lead partner. And so for us, having to deal with so many industries was definitely diluting our network. But now being able to just being one network is to having the network that is relevant to all of our founders.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's pretty cool.
For that, how does development of that network look? So it sounds like it's attached to the themes that you're working on. So do you kind of take a look at your network and go, we need to develop out some of our advisors or develop that network before we get into this? Or is it looking at the network and kind of working back towards a theme?
Yeah, it's iterative. So for example, when you start getting people in your webinars and you're reacting to your content, then all of a sudden you start sort of seeing people in LinkedIn that are good people to have in the network.
Yeah.
And so you just constantly have to feed it. Mm-hmm. But they kind of raise their hand by being active in your sort of broader fire
Environment, yeah.
and broader environment, right? So, but we don't necessarily that is still relatively manual, right?
Yeah.
What we do automatically is that if somebody reacts on a certain piece of content, we do have them in our database automatically, right? So that in our database, in our newsletter. And so the question is how can we activate them here? This would be more of a manual. Hey, do we have the right search metaphor to actually find that one needle in a haystack, especially as this network becomes much larger. Right now it's about 2,000. So we need a better search methodology to sort of find that needle in a haystack.
For sure.
So that's the summary-ish of what we have thus far. But like I said, we're just 2 years into this, and what we'd love to be able to do is learn more from the whole room and get it to the place where we wish VC will, or I hope VC gets to, which is what we call human enablement. Our theme is basically we're sort of eating our own dog food, so to speak, by sort of trying as hard as we can about automating our own work and leaving the nuggets of the work that we really, really are uniquely positioned to do, which is more the human
side. Yep.
So yeah, with that, I think we have a little bit of time, right?
We have a little bit of time for questions. I have a few questions teed up, but before we get into that, let's open up to the room. Does anyone have any questions for Sergio? Or maybe... Okay, so maybe one question. I don't know what clock's down here. Go ahead.
Hi. So I'm curious to see if you got any interesting insights. I really like what you're doing with the content that you're generating and trying to track the reactions and all that. So I'm curious if you have gotten any important insights that have later helped you either reach a right founder or a right LP or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we thematically think of the only way to kind of predict what's going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years in that one area that you're snapshotting, like you're doing a market map on. The only way to do it is through conversations with these people. So in the webinars, for example, in the insight that came to me is how poorly run board meetings are and boards are. And it's not just because OpenAI and FTX and Tesla, all kind of, there's headlines out there. I started thinking once people started telling me, and then I realized, oh wow, that's a service not many angels provide that, or not many micro VCs provide that, because they haven't had the experience to be in a crappy board like I have, right? In some, not all of them. But so to me, that insight came out of the webinar, and then I understood who were the biggest experts in that topic, and then we started creating the playbook for founders that don't yet have a board. For example, we also realized that bad habits in boards start really early before you even have a board. So you need to kind of like intervene before the bad habits start, because the cadence of a team, the cadence of a board starts with the A, the B, the C, and all of a sudden, once you gel that culture in a board, then all of a sudden it's too late, right? And so, one more? Or?
Yeah, we do have time for one more.
For that amount of work to build VCOS, how many portfolio companies do you have right now, and how many do you add a year, just to get a sense of?
Yeah, like I said, we have a small portfolio of 20 because we're in Fund 1. We'll probably end up next year with 30-ish. And then in Fund 2, we'll get another 30 or so. So I think it's a small portfolio. Probably about 8 to 10 a year, depending if we're sitting in 22 or 23 or 24, because that would matter what kind of market we have, right? What kind of situation we have.
Awesome. All right. Well, we do have to end it there. I know everyone wants to stretch out their legs, but let's stay here, come back. We're going to roll straight into deal awards. So deal maker awards, sorry. Thank you, Sergio.
Thank you. Yeah.